Hello everyone, it's Leon here and I'm with Meeks and his 45-hour save of Dark Souls 2, which is barely half of what you played at Dark Souls 1.
Yeah, I finished 100+ hours save on Dark Souls 1. This guy is called Boromir because I'm a massive Lord of the Rings fan and I've got an unhealthy man crush on Sean Bean.
But so based on the 45 hours that Meeks has put into this, we've got a few tips, we've got a few bits and pieces that he's learnt along the way. What is your first #1 tip then for anyone that's about to start Dark Souls 2?
#1 tip is be patient. The key in combat is don't rush in. You know, observe your enemy's attack patterns, see how they kind of move, see what attacks they have, and then, you know, kind of fight accordingly. The worst thing you can do, especially against a boss, is just, you know, deplete your stamina immediately by going in quickly and slashing away loads of times. So I'd always say, observe your enemy from a distance. Once you feel comfortable with their attack pattern, you know, kind of get in close, keep strafing, and, you know, just strike when you've got a window opportunity. So a lot of the times the more powerful enemies will have some downtime after they go for a big attack, and then that's the opportunity to really strike. So.
Okay, and if you are someone who's not played Dark Souls before, someone that's come into it because they've heard a lot about it, what would be your advice?
My advice would be, don't immediately waste all your souls in the first weapon you find, because chances are you'll find a weapon that you have a lot more affinity to a couple hours down the line. Like, say this is a +9, +10 even halberd, which I've spent about 20 hours with. I love this weapon. I'd always recommend going for a kind of mid-range, like kind of jabbing weapon like a spear or a halberd, and just upgrading the first sword you find. So
the way it works is you find Titanite and you can buy Titanite, and that's what you use to upgrade weapons. And you're saying basically wait, hold off.
I'd say wait. You can, like, there's a kind of weapons craftsman in Majula even, not Apu's wife, in the hub area of Dark Souls 2, which is kind of similar to the Firelink shrine from the last game, and he has got like a small kind of supply of Titanite which you'll quickly run out of. So you usually have to farm Titanite from the world by fighting certain enemies. If you want some large Titanite shards, which are very useful for getting your weapon up to like +5 and 6, they can be found in, I think it's called Black Gulch, by these kind of wormy tentacle beasties that spring up from black pools of oil. If you stay there long enough and you've got a decent enough weapon, you'll eventually farm a few pieces of that, which is useful.
So are there any areas, you mentioned Black Gulch and Forest of Fallen Giants, in the original game there was obviously the graveyard, which you couldn't go near to before you'd leveled up and got sort of a bit harder.
Oh, spiders!
Are there any sort of areas you want to like go make a point of going to or avoiding when you first start?
Yeah, so you should definitely start with the Land of the Fallen Giants, which is the kind of first area proper you come to after the hub world. You actually start in a kind of like misty swamp. I'm probably going to die here, called Things in Betwixt, which I'm going to die, which teaches you the kind of basics of combat. Actually, what we do now, rather than me getting killed by loads of spiders, we'll warp back to the hub world just so I can give you a brief little show around and give you an idea of where you should go when you first start.
How many times do you think you've seen the "You've Died" screen this time around?
Hundreds. So here is a bonfire. Now, I can't use bonfire because there's enemies close. I'll have to kill them first. The big difference with bonfires this time out is, unlike the last game where you only got granted the ability to walk between them probably over the last 3 or 4 hours of the game, at this point in this game you can warp between bonfires immediately. So as soon as you find a new bonfire, you rest it, then that's saved and you can travel between them at will. So this kind of gives you an idea of 45 hours in how many locations are, and I haven't even unlocked them all yet, so there are a lot of locations. So we'll go to Majula, which is the hub world, which is where you can level up and buy weapons. Slightly annoyingly, unlike the last game, you actually have to go a woman in Majula to level up rather than being able to do it yourself from a campsite, which is a wee bit of a bugger, but you learn to get through it. So this is the woman. Talk to her. I don't have any souls just now, but you talk to her and you can level up from her. So
she'll sort you out. Okay.
She'll also boost your Estus flask, which is your kind of health potion.
So 45 hours in, you mentioned not upgrading the first weapon you find. Talk about heading to the Forest of Fallen Giants first of all. What are the other things you now know, nearly 50 hours in, that you wish you'd known about or done right at the beginning.
Right, so I didn't discover it until a fellow reviewer showed me where it was, but what was massively helpful is actually down this way. So right now I'm going to a place called Heidi's Tower of Flame, I believe it's called. It's basically a kind of destroyed castle ramparts surrounded by, populated by these massive annoying knights who are like mega difficult to kill right at the beginning of the game. If I absolutely speed through them now, it's because I've got a really powerful weapon, but if you keep going this way you'll eventually find a ring, and I'll try and give you a really quick look at it just so you know exactly where you're going. There's a ring in this area called the Ring of Binding, which essentially stops the HP rot that happens when you become hollow. So the big difference between this and the last game is the health system works essentially like the original Demon Souls. So in the last game you're either human or undead, or hollowed out. When you became hollowed out in the last game, your HP didn't drop. That is not the case here. So every time you die, your life bar depletes very slightly until you'll get to a point where it's essentially capped at half HP if you say die 6 times in a row with a boss. You can restore your humanity full life bar with human effigies, which are the same as humanity from the last game, but to stop the rot and to decrease the amount of health you lose every time you come hollow, you can equip the Ring of Binding, which really drastically stops you losing HP every time you die. So
that sounds useful.
Keep running this way. It'll only take about 30 seconds to get to it, and I was just running past these knights. See, this is another thing that is a valid tactic. I think if you've not played Dark Souls before, you don't realise that avoiding a fight is actually a good idea. Running, and we'll see if you visit official PlayStation magazine.co.uk. There should be written tips up there just about now, and they will tell you all about running. And certainly there's no shame in running, because these guys, when you've only got a little piddly sword and you're level 10, you're going to stand no chance. I'll do this guy in 3 hits. Yeah. If you've got a normal sword, that'll take you about 3 minutes when you first begin the game, and one of his swipes will kill you stone dead. So go up this drawbridge. I should point out there are 3 switches. I won't show you where they all are now. You need to activate the 3 switches just to get the drawbridge. If you just see to the left of where I fight the guy, you should just see what looks like a kind of stone. It's like a headstone almost. I'll kill this guy and I'll show you exactly what it is. Don't even think about it. It's fine. There we go. So, are there any other big changes for people coming to this from Dark Souls 1? Any other big changes they should know about before they make any horrible mistakes? Yeah, so sorry, here's the switch. Quickly, there's a knight here, kill that knight, this switch comes up, pull this switch, and run across this drawbridge very quickly. And inside this chest, which I've already opened, you'll find the ring of binding, which is really useful. So ask me that question again. 20 seconds. So if you're coming to this from Dark Souls, you're a Dark Souls pro, is there anything that this does differently that you need to know about? Yeah, well, I guess what I just touched on, the health. The hollow system is the one really big change. A change that makes things more accessible is you're now allowed to carry 4 rings instead of 2, so that is really beneficial. So if I just bring up the menu system quickly, I can show you that. So you get 4 ring slots. The setup I've usually got, I use a Clarina 3 ring, which radically improves the rate at which you recover stamina. However it's pronounced. Yeah, that thing. I use Royal Soldier's Ring, which increases your maximum load, which allows you to carry more weapons and heavier coats of armour. Are these things, are you going to be swapping these things out then, depending on the situation? Yeah, I do. Boss fight certain boss fights. So here's one, like, it increases dark defence. There's a boss from an area we've just come through that I've defeated earlier called, I think, the old Dragon Slayer, who he shoots dark magic here. Right. So you just say, I want to equip dark defence for that. So yeah, and Ring of Life Protection is useful. Say if you're in human state, you've got a lot of souls and you're going into a big difficult boss fight, if you equip once you die, you'll keep all your souls and you'll keep your humanity, but it'll break immediately. And you'll lose it, right. And you'll lose it, but you can actually repair it. So where should we go next? What about the classes then? Would you recommend a particular class or any kind of character kind of makeup? I have gone with a warrior class. Which is, it's essentially the best class to go with if you're going for pure melee. I've got a friend of mine who's also reviewing this who started off as a kind of cleric with casting miracles and such, and he actually warned me off going against that because he said essentially the only benefit you get is a small healing potion, and also you don't do as much damage with attacks. So I mean, certainly my run, I've always just prioritised being a melee fighter, and then going soldier will give you like the strongest melee attacks, and you'll have kind of most resistance to physical attacks as well. So.
Are there any kind of, in Dark Souls it was the master key, wasn't it? You could pick as a sort of, wasn't it? Perk,
yeah, I don't. Well, it essentially opened up low level.
But it was a thing everyone recommended you get that because it gave you access to stuff.
So I think one of the starting perks is I think you can get like 5 human effigies, which are, like I said, the equivalent of humanity loss in the last game. I'd suggest stocking up on them as your kind of bonus split because they are so rare and they're extremely useful to have because, especially with the HP group that comes with being hollow, being human is quite rare. So I'd say plump for the human effigies. This area here is called Los Bastille, which I guess you get through. I guess you get here about 8 or 9 hours into the game, and it's quite hard. As it's much more deserted than it usually is. That's another big change. So when you get to the bonfires, if you keep dying and respawning, enemies will eventually disappear. So I think that's been designed that way as a kind of double purpose. Firstly, it kind of stops you just shamelessly spamming for souls, because that is something you could do in the first game. There was actually a place called Tomb of the Fallen Giants in the first game, which had this kind of cave filled with water and all these baby little skeletons. Those skeletons were insanely easy to kill, and they'd constantly respawn. There'd be a never-ending spiral. You wouldn't even have to go back to a bonfire. You could, generally, if you stayed there for about 20 minutes, you'd basically build up about 100,000 souls. In this, enemies disappear after you die, say 6 or 7 times, which for the cat-handed it makes it easier to get to certain places, and for the cynical it makes it harder to spam souls.
So here's a test for you while you're playing. The tips that are up on the website.
Yes.
What else? What were the other sort of the key ones?
So yeah, fleeing we've mentioned. I've talked about the Ring of Binding. I've talked about not spaffing all your souls away on the first weapon. I've recommended you go with that. A ring or a halberd. I think I also say just be aware of your surroundings. So do exactly what I didn't do there, which is do not get yourself penned in, because that's quite easy to do.
Because you do sometimes get clues, don't you? Sort of, if you stop and have a look around, you can see like a corner, or sometimes you can just see an enemy lurking.
So something that I will mention is in the tips that I don't think we'll get to show you in this video, but it's definitely worth mentioning, is friendly phantoms. Now, friendly phantoms are, you'll come across several NPC characters throughout the course of the game, like fellow warriors that you can chat with. If you keep chatting with them, just keep hitting X until all their new conversation options disappear, you'll eventually get the option to befriend them and summon them in battle. Now, their summon signs will usually come up just before a boss fight, and you'll notice them because it'll be like a flaming sign on the floor, usually near mist barriers. You have to be in human form to see them, but summoning them is incredibly useful. There's one just for a guy called the Last Sinner, which is actually in that area. Los Bastille, we're just in. You want to basically summon them just after you go down a little lift, and it's about 30 seconds till you get to the Last Sinner. What they do is even though they're not that powerful, they essentially provide like an invaluable distraction. So they keep the boss off your back while they're wailing you. So that is very useful. So somewhere else. So
what was all that? Can we have a look at the inventory then when you bring back up? Because you had like loads of stuff.
Yes.
I mean, is there more stuff? I don't remember you having that much stuff or building up that much of a supply.
Generally the menus are massively improved. They're a lot less cluttered. But as you see, my inventory is stuffed full of rubbish.
What are the key things here then? What are the key things people will want to get?
Key things, okay. Estus flasks. Now this is another big change, another much harder change from the first game. First game gave you 5 Estus flasks to begin with, and you could eventually upgrade to even 20 if you learned a summoning at the Bonfire. This game you start with 1, and after 40 hours of play you can see I've now got 4. So you basically gain an Estus flask after every couple of bosses, and you can find Estus flask shards in the world that if you take back to the room that Majula went earlier, she'll basically strengthen the Estus flask. But Estus flasks are much more stingy, and the annoying thing with an Estus flask is you can't really use them when an enemy's right on you because the animation to drink them is quite pronounced. There is a new item called Radiating Life Gems. I don't actually have them in this inventory, but they're basically a little glowing ball. You take them, the animation's a lot quicker than the Estus flask, and they just gradually restore your health.
Right.
Human effigies are basically the old version of humanity, as we've mentioned a couple of times. I don't have any, but it's basically kind of like a white shell thingy. Yeah. It looks a bit like that, actually. It looks a bit like a Twilight Herb. Other important things, souls that you collect, which is the currency in the game. Yeah. And if you die 2 times in a row and you don't get back to your last soul, you will lose all of them. What else have we got? Bonfire aesthetic.
Aesthetic, yeah. No,
yeah, it's
aesthetic.
Aesthetic. Oh, go English. God knows why you'd want to use this. This makes any nearby enemies harder. If you burn this in a bonfire, God knows why you want to do that. And yeah, cracked red eye orb is important for multiplayer. You use one of these and you can invade another player's world for some P2P fights. So
okay, so your key things then are to be patient in combat, not to waste your sort of upgrades, not titanium, what's it called again, sorry?
Titanite.
Titanite, so not to upgrade the first weapon you get, to hold out for a little while.
Oh, that was good.
Not to fall into water.
Not to fall into water, that's a big one.
Head out to was it the Blue Cathedral for the ring?
Yeah. And there's another quick specific one. It's near Heidi's Tower of Flame. Before you fight the boss, who's called the Dragon Rider, there are 3 switches, like the one we saw on the drawbridge, dotted at various parts of the environment. Flip all them and that'll expand the area you fight that Dragon Rider boss, so you can't be knocked off in the water. If you fight him normally, you're on just like a kind of tiny stone platform, and one big swoosh of his weapon will knock you off in the water. So extend the arena with the 3 switches before you fight.
And are there any sort of tips on Covenants? Any ones?
There is one which I think is called the Blue Covenant. Absolutely quote me on that. At the beginning of the game, called in Majula. Yeah. It's basically up some stairs and to your right from the bonfire. There's a very forlorn-looking guy next to a big monument. Talk to him for a bit and he'll let you join them. What that does is essentially you'll be called into battle for online fights more often to assist players. So if you're really looking to get heavy-handed with the co-op, that should make it a bit easier to find players.
Cool. Okay, well there you go. That's a few tips there from Meeks' 45 hours in hell, by the looks of it. If you've got any questions, leave a comment and we will answer them. If you like the video, well, like it and subscribe, and we shall see you guys soon. Take care.
Bye.